Good morning. Today's proceedings are going to be live streamed. Those with electronic devices may use them to transmit to the outside world what they have heard, but only 10 minutes after what they are describing has elapsed. The proceedings are subject to a reporting restriction order, and you must ensure, please, that that is strictly complied with when transmitting what you've heard. Your devices may not be used for recording or photography. We are going to sit today until 4:30. There will be a break in the morning as usual. There will be a break in the afternoon as usual. It is important that the witness is able to give evidence about important issues that are going to be discussed today, and to do so when fit and able to do so. Therefore, Mr. Lambert, if there comes a stage, at any stage in today's proceedings, when you feel you need a break which is not announced in advance, please say so.
Thank you, sir.
Mr. Barr.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Lambert, is it right that you first met Belinda Harvey at a house party?
Yes, I think that that may be right. My recollection was that it was some sort of benefit gig, but I think what I read from her evidence is that it was a party, and invitations, I think, from someone in the animal rights movement. In any event, yes, I met her. I'm quite prepared to accept that it was a party, yes.
In the East End of London?
Yes.
Forest Gate?
No, oh no, sort of Stoke Newington.
At that party, your eyes met across the room.
I can't recall precisely.
And there came a time when Belinda Harvey was on her own and you went over to speak to her.
Again, I can't remember. I can't remember precisely, but I'm prepared to accept that.
And you both got on well with one another immediately?
Yes, to the best of my recollection, that's right, yeah.
You talked for quite some time.
I think, yes, I think that's right, yes.
And in the small hours of the morning, you offered to give Belinda Harvey and her friend and housemate, Simon Termaine, a lift home.
Well, I don't recall it, but I'm quite prepared to accept that that was the case.
And when you got to their house, which was in Marjorie Park Road, you dropped them off.
Again, yes, I accept that was the case.
Is it right?
Oh, no, sorry. No, you said Marjorie Park Road?
Yes.
No, no, well, certainly, no, Belinda Harvey wasn't living at that address then. It was an address I think I've mentioned in an interview. It was in it was fairly close to the event where we met, Stoke Newington. I'm not saying it in any pejorative way or important way, but it was a squat, as I recall. So, I mean, it was, I think it would have been in walking distance of where the event was. So, I mean,
Is this a property that you came to visit many times thereafter?
well, several times.
It was a shared house, not a squat, wasn't it?
Well, that's my recollection, but I'm quite prepared to accept that it was a shared house of
Did you kiss Belinda Harvey on that first evening when you were dropping her off?
well, no, I genuinely can't recall.
Did she give her your telephone number?
Again, I can't recall. I may have, well, telephone number. I can't recall.
Did you go into the house on that first occasion or not?
No recollection.
Can we have up on the screen, please, from volume 3, tab B, Roman numeral 1, 22, 737136. Could we have page 5, please? If we could, thank you. This is a note which is dated Tuesday evening, 228 Graham Road, East 8. 228 Graham Road, East 8 was your cover address, wasn't it?
Correct.
Dear Belinda, just a line to say that I'm thinking about you, block capitals, a lot, exclamation mark. And that I'm looking forward to seeing you again, block capitals, soon. So I'll limp downstairs to the letterbox and post this card to you. And then I'll search for a phone box that works and ring you for a block capitals, 2 exclamation marks, date. Love, Bob. This is a note that you wrote and delivered to Belinda Harvey's home in the days shortly after the party, isn't it?
I'm sure it is.
And you were following up on having hit it off with her at the party.
Yes.
Why did you write this note?
I can't think today of anything beyond what seems sort of very clear in the letter. I know, I guess you're asking me to think beyond what I am clearly saying and doing. I mean, but quite to add, to talk beyond that, I will, if you, I'll try.
Let me put it another way. This is a considered action in the cold light of day.
Yes.
Very obviously pursuing a relationship.
Yes.
You are a undercover police officer in the course of your duty. Why were you seeking to form an intimate relationship with a member of the public?
I think I was involved in my life as Bob Robinson, and I failed to give the consideration, the proper consideration to my actions here. I mean, clearly I can see today how wrong it was. And because, in case I forget it, you know, and this is, I haven't seen this for sort of, you know, nearly 40 years. So it, you know, this demonstrates to me, sort of, you know, beyond question, my role, and so it's the right moment, you know, for me to apologise directly to Belinda. You know, I shouldn't have written that letter. I had every opportunity not to. I can only apologise and take not. I mean, yes, I do. Sorry, you know, I take responsibility for that. I know that the impact of my undercover role at that stage, 1987, I know that it was taking a toll in the way that clinical psychiatrists such as Gordon Turnbull recognise and talk to, and I'm not seeking to use any of that as an excuse, only some kind of, perhaps at best, some sort of mitigation or explanation as to why I acted in a way that I would not otherwise do. As you know, well, I don't know, but as you know from me at any rate, you know, I was never a womanizer outside of my life as Bob Robinson. Here I am, aged 72. I've had 2 sexual relationships, both with my wives, my former wife, I beg your pardon, and my current wife. I've never ever dreamt of doing that. And yet 4 times I've done it, as we've now seen. This is the 4th time I've had entered into a relationship that I shouldn't have done. They all happened, and it's the only times that this has happened in my 72 years. And again, this is only some kind of context and mitigation, and what's left. You know, I'm in the wrong, absolutely. But the only thing that I think I can prove, well, I think I can go some way to establishing here, is that at all points in this relationship and the others, I acted with, you know, complete respect for the in this case, you know, for Belinda's wishes, and not only was that my inclination to be kind and considerate and, you know, affectionate, thoughtful, but in addition, I had to be, because we might see evidence that if a member of my circle, this, you know, the group that we're now familiar with, if any man in that circle was even ever thought of as some kind of sexual predator, and even worse, any sort of sexual abuse, that individual, that activist, would be expelled. and there's evidence of that. So there was my own inclination, but in terms of maintaining cover, it wasn't a problem, but for me. But I only say that to highlight that I was. I behaved as Bob Robinson, and indeed as Bob Lambert has only ever behaved towards women.
Could we take that document down, please? Was the reality that you regarded seducing young women during the course of your deployment as a perk of the job?
You know, Mr. Barr, that was not me, and that is important for me to say. I'm not making excuses. It was wrong, but I was not that person. I've read in recent years accounts that I am in the same bracket as one or two notorious police officers who are now in prison serving long sentences for serious sexual abuse of women. That's where my reputation lies to many, many people today. I am placed in that category. And that's really why I'm trying to speak as frankly and honestly to you today and throughout this week, because that means a lot to me. It means a lot to my family, even though I've let my family down. I've let both my first wife and my present wife, I've let them down. I've let my deceased children down. I've let my son, my living son, I've let everyone down. I've let former colleagues down. The vast majority of colleagues who, never made the mistakes that I did, never made the decisions I did. I was wrong, and I apologise sincerely. But I accept all the criticism that I'm sure I will get, and I need that. I don't want to make excuses.
For deceived women in the course of your deployment, what other explanation is there if it is not perk of the job?
It's a full explanation will come from with the input of an experienced clinical psychiatrist plus my own honest participation. I think that would be a step in that direction.
Back to London in 1987, the first date. You took Belinda Harvey to a vegan restaurant in Stoke Newington Church Street, didn't you?
I'm sure I did.
A restaurant that you'd used before.
Quite probably.
You, after the meal, held hands and went back to your flat.
That sounds quite, yes, I'm sure that's what happened, yeah.
your flat was Spartan, but there were a number of "What's wrong with McDonald's" leaflets there.
I'm sure there were.
Was it on that occasion that the relationship first became sexual?
I can't recall, but I think that sounds, quite likely.
But whether it was on that occasion or some other, the relationship, there came a time when you had sex.
Yes.
And it became a sexual relationship.
Yes.
Did you consider whether Belinda Harvey would have consented to sex if she had known who you really were?
I don't think I gave that consideration.
If you had given it consideration, what would the answer have been?
I can't recall now really how I would have thought at the time.
What is your thinking now?
Yes, forgive me. And the question you're putting.
Would Belinda Harvey have consented to sex with you if she had known who you really were?
Oh no, I don't think so.
Is there anything else you want to say about why you entered into both an emotional and sexual relationship with Belinda Harvey? In particular, I would like to know whether it's your evidence that enhancing your cover or obtaining intelligence were motives.
No, I don't think. I'm fairly sure those were not motives. I think that there may have been. They may have been. I think there may have been some benefits that ensued, but that was not my motive.
Could we have up now, please, from Volume 3, Tab B, Little Roman numeral 1, 41, the document at 34798. Three, 4, 9, 7, 8, sorry. Thank you. Go to page 9. Is it right that you first met Belinda Harvey either in late March or early April of 1987?
That sounds about right. Yeah.
Before you first had sex with Belinda Harvey, was there any discussion of contraception?
I can't recall today.
Can you recall whether there came a time when you talked about contraception?
I'm sure that we did, but I can't recall it.
Did you use contraception?
Not to the best of my recollection.
Was it your understanding that Belinda Harvey did?
Yes.
On this page, I'd like to start the section that says Hackney, London, June 1987. One day, Bob and I were strolling around Hackney when he suggested we nip into a nearby cafe. As we took our seats, he told me there was something urgent that he needed to speak to me about. His face looked so solemn that I expected the worst. My heart felt like a lead weight. We'd been seeing each other for over a month, and I was blissfully in love with him, as he seemed to be with me. I'm reading here from the book Deep Deception, in the chapter about Belinda Harvey. What is it? I asked, slumping down into the chair opposite his. It's important, Belinda. Could we go over the page? He looked so serious that I convinced myself it must be bad news. Just say it. Whatever it is, just tell me. Belinda, he said, holding my hands in the space he'd created between us, I want you to promise to be faithful to me and not sleep with anyone else. The nervous breath I'd been holding came flooding out of my lungs as a sigh of relief. Was that all? Of course, I insisted. However, Bob didn't give me a chance to reply because he hadn't finished. I don't want to get HIV, he added bluntly, not even looking me in the eye. What? I gasped. I waited for him to laugh and say it had been a joke, only he didn't. He was deadly serious. I think we can stop there. Do you recall a conversation of that nature with Belinda Harvey?
Well, more than not recalling it, I feel certain that I did not say that.
When you say not say that, did you have a conversation about monogamy?
I can't begin to think that I would, both in terms of just, being Bob Robinson, but it just doesn't ring true to me.
Belinda Harvey was under the impression that she was in a loving, monogamous relationship with you. Did you give her grounds to have that understanding?
Well, yes. I think that I think that in terms of the life of in the life of Bob Robinson, no question, I was not having a sexual relationship with, Bob Robinson was not having a sexual relationship with anyone but her. I think we would, it's just this conversation. I would never, it seems wholly implausible that I would want to sit down with her. I've got something important to tell you, and then this is it. And then in particular, the fact, I don't want to get HIV. I mean, well, look, I don't know how it, just for me, it just doesn't seem like, as I remember Bob Robinson, because anyway, I'm sorry, I just don't think this conversation, in the way that it's reported on this page, I don't think, I certainly don't recall it, and I just can't think that that it would have taken place.
In 1987, HIV and AIDS were a very big concern, weren't they?
Yes.
It was the era before there were any effective treatments.
Well, yes, to the best of my recollection.
There were major public health campaigns aimed at reducing its spread, weren't there?
Yes.
It would have been an entirely natural topic of conversation, wouldn't it?
It's the context that's important. I know what, I know, yeah, I agree with you about the period, but none of which convinces me that this conversation took place.
Did you ask Belinda Harvey to be faithful to you?
Well, not that I can recall. No.
Might you have done so in furtherance of a romantic relationship with her?
Well, I can't. It's possible, but it doesn't quite. I don't think so.
In one of your earlier answers, you made clear that you at least gave the impression that Bob Robinson was being faithful to Belinda Harvey. Is that fair?
Yes.
And the truth, on your account, would be that that wasn't true because you had a wife and 2 children at home, didn't you?
Oh yes. Yes. That's why I made the distinction. Yeah.
And were you in fact also still sleeping, at least occasionally, with Jackie?
No, I'm absolutely certain that was not the case.
On any view, you were being hypocritical, weren't you?
Yes. Clearly everything, of course, every step of the way, of course, but in terms of, for what it's worth, I'm not saying it's worth much, but just for the record, and again, it's just as I remember the life I led as Bob Robinson, that my sexual relationship with with Jackie had ended before this relationship started.
In seeking fidelity from Belinda Harvey in the era of untreatable HIV AIDS, were you thinking only of your own well-being and not of Belinda Harvey's?
Well, I don't accept that I was. I can't really accept this account.
What other explanation is there?
I'm sorry, an explanation for?
Seeking fidelity.
Well, I don't accept that that's what I was doing.
Did you tell Belinda Harvey that you were 29 years old?
I'm sure I wouldn't have done that because the creation and the maintenance of Bob Robinson's life and presence was, absolute. From day one, I was the age. Let's say, that basically there wasn't a great deal of difference between Bob Robinson's age and Bob Lambert's. In terms of a record, I always wanted to stick to that from day one. I discussed it, and all the way through it was like a fundamental thing. I would never have said to anyone that I was a different age.
It's Belinda Harvey's evidence that you did tell her that you were 29. Are you sure you're not mistaken about that?
Well, I can't recall any conversations with her when I discussed my age. I can just be, reasonably sure that it's one of those things. I had to be consistent. I had a cover story for everyone else, everyone that knew me, though, and some knew me closely, and no one thought I was 29. Not that everyone's sort of paying close attention to my exact age, but I had to be, consistent. It doesn't make sense to me.
You were 35 years old when you met Belinda Harvey, weren't you?
Yes.
She was 24.
Yes.
That is a very big age gap, isn't it?
Yes.
Representing yourself to be 29 would improve your prospects of successfully seducing Belinda Harvey, wouldn't it?
Well, what can I say? I would have had no reason to do that. We were attracted to each other. I don't think her age or my age entered into it, and I don't believe that I seduced her. I believe that our relationship was built on friendship and mutual attraction.
All four of the women with whom you had sex during the course of your deployment in your undercover identity were in their early 20s, weren't they?
Yes.
Why was that?
I can't think now of any reason why.
It's the reality that you were preying on young women.
I'm absolutely certain that wasn't the case.
Is there any positive reason that you would like to advance to the inquiry as to why all of them were so much younger than you?
There's nothing today that I can think of to add.
Sexual gratification, perhaps?
No, I wouldn't add that as a that was not a motivating factor at all in the forming of this relationship.
Belinda Harvey was not a political activist, was she?
No. At the initial, when we first met, because I knew that where we met, it had, there was an animal rights connection. Now, my thought was that it was an animal rights type event. I certainly went there with animal rights friends. If it was indeed a party organised by an animal rights person, then, you know, when I first met her, I probably thought that she, you know, may have had some connection to animal rights. But beyond that, yes, once I got to know her, then yes, you know, she was not an activist. That's correct.
When you got to know her, it became clear to you, didn't it, that she was, first of all, a graduate of Lancaster University?
Yes.
Who had made her way from her home in the northwest, from her family home in the northwest, to seek her fortune in London.
Yes.
And that she was working for the Central Electricity Generating Board.
Yes.
And she was on a career path to become an accountant.
Yes.
Not activist material.
No.
Could we take that down, please? Could we have up 135081? This is your witness statement for the inquiry, page 189, please. On this page is your evidence about meeting Belinda Harvey. Paragraph 331. I met Belinda Harvey at a social gathering organised by the squatting community around about May 1987. I attended the event with ALF colleagues as part of my role. That was the beginning of a friendship that developed into a sexual relationship subsequently. In fact, as we have been through, the truth is that it developed immediately. Right from the start, it was, there was a sexual frisson, and it became a sexual relationship immediately.
Well, not immediately, but from, you know, from what the letter that you've shown me, that, you know, that certainly gives me some clarity, which I didn't have 2 years ago when I made the statement.
Could we have 332 up, please? The sexual relationship with Belinda Harvey started a few weeks after the event. That's not true, is it? It was quicker than that.
It would certainly seem now that it, you know, seems to have started earlier, but that was my best recollection 2 years ago, without really having anything apart from my memory to go by. I mean, if in fact it started, I mean, maybe it started a few days, a week after. It wasn't at the event. It looks like from that letter I sent, it seems likely that it started maybe, you know, a week after. So, I mean, I think my recollection 2 years ago is not far wrong, is it?
Could we have 333, please? I did not ever live with Belinda Harvey. We'll be coming back to that. I spent time at her home initially in Hackney and later in Forest Gate. In Hackney, she lived in a squat with her friends, and I stayed overnight there regularly. Well, we've already had your evidence as to the status of the property. It's certainly right, isn't it, that you did stay overnight regularly once the relationship had begun?
Yes, and I mean, just going back to, in Hackney she lived in a squat. I mean, I would have had some reason for thinking that, and now when I look back on it, that was the appearance. I had some experience, but I can't, certainly I can't be sure.
And was it in fact 86 Marjorie Park Road?
I beg your pardon, sorry?
Was it in fact 86 Marjorie Park Road where
no,
Belinda was living?
No. Marjorie Park Road is Forest Gate. Hackney, this is where I thought, where she was living when I first met her, Hackney, but in the Stamford Hill area. That, where it says in Hackney, I think, I thought at the time that the property was a squat. I mean, nothing hangs on that, and I'm perfectly willing to accept that it was some shared accommodation.
Paragraph 334. The commencement and continuation of my relationship with Belinda Harvey was not in any way influenced by my tasking. I was not tasked to form a close relationship with her for the purposes of gathering intelligence. That's true, isn't it?
Yes.
We met because she was connected to my target group, but I did not become involved in any way because I thought the relationship would assist me in my cover role. She was not connected with your target group, was she?
Well, what I meant was that we met because I was working as I was Bob Robinson. I was attending what I accept now was a party with, I think I've said, let's say animal rights friends. That there were certainly, if the account that it was a party hosted by someone in the animal rights movement, then I would have known people there. So that's all I mean by the connection. I was there with my people in my target group.
We can take that down now. Because you came to know Belinda Harvey very well indeed, you must have known by 2022, when you made this statement, that Belinda Harvey had not, in fact, been connected to your target group.
Yes, it was. I mean, what I meant by that was that the connection there was for me. Okay, it was badly worded. My mistake.
Why in 2022 are you still portraying Belinda Harvey as living in a squat and being connected to animal rights activists?
I'm sorry, I didn't catch that.
Why in 2022 are you still portraying Belinda Harvey as living in a squat and an animal rights activist?
No, if I can, I'd need to have it back on the screen. I don't think.
Well, we've just been through all 4 paragraphs.
Okay, well, it was not any. I was not deliberately meaning to say that she, it was a connection of kind. I'm not saying she was an activist. There was clearly a connection that brought us together. We were both invited or we're both attending the same party, which at the very least, was some kind of animal rights event or gathering.
You're giving the impression in 2022 that she has a connection. And we'll have it back up again. 35081. See the exact wording. Right at the bottom of the page. We met because she was connected to my target group. She had nothing to do with either London Greenpeace or the ALF, did she?
No. We met. Yes, well, it was that was my sort of honest mistake. I did not intend to suggest that she wasn't part of my target group. There was a kind of connection, though. Why we met, I mean, it was a kind of, we
Was the reason why you were still so portraying Belinda Harvey in 2022 to try and diminish sympathy for her?
No, certainly not. And I'm here today to clarify that, absolutely.
Can we take that down now, please? Mr. Tremaine has described your relationship with Belinda Harvey as a great love affair. To a close friend of Belinda Harvey, did it look like that?
Yes, it may well have done, yeah.
And for Belinda Harvey, it was just that, wasn't it?
Yes.
But not for you.
Well, I was first and foremost, I was emotionally involved. I was emotionally attached.
You were going home to your wife and children in between spending time as Bob Robinson.
I was.
Belinda Harvey gave evidence that the relationship throughout its duration was always intense. An intense, intimate and sexual relationship. Is that right?
Well, look, my recollection would be more on, certainly romantic, but not intense. I think it was, involved humour, friendship. I think a light sort of. I don't remember it being intense as such. I think it was certainly very affectionate and very, very warm, very comforting.
Bob Robinson was the perfect boyfriend, wasn't he?
Bob Robinson was kind and considerate, but I don't think, not perhaps not intense, really.
You went to a number of concerts together, didn't you?
Yes.
REM, Peter Gabriel, Squeeze.
I can't remember precisely, but
And you were offering Belinda Harvey a dream of a life partner.
well, I don't think I was offering her a dream of a life partner.
Did you give any thought to the fact that you were playing with her emotions?
No, I don't think I gave thought to that that prospect. Obviously, I should have done. I think I believed that it was an affectionate, romantic relationship that obviously I knew that it would come to an end, and you know, I hoped that she would be able to look back on it fondly of it, and not suffer greatly from it. I obviously hoped that she would never find out that I was in fact an undercover police officer. But
she did not know that it was going to end, did she?
not until late in 1988.
How did it make you feel to be in this relationship?
Well, it was, it was a very warm, comforting, sort of emotionally, a very yes, it was a good place to be. Yeah.
The fact that you knew the reality and she did not, did that give you a sense of power and control over her?
Well, no, I honestly don't think that was the case. I think I was able to, in at least, in some way, I'd grown accustomed to compartmentalising two lives. I know it was not doing me any good, but at the time I could do that. I could.
Wasn't doing her any good either, was it?
No, well, not as things have turned out. No.
Can we move now to TBS? Did you tell Belinda Harvey that Jackie had tricked you into fathering TBS or anything like that?
No, this is something, again, that I can be absolutely certain about. I cared deeply about TBS. I cared deeply about Jackie, and again, how I felt privately as Bob Lambert was wholly in accord with how Bob Robinson felt and acted, part obvious reasons, but there are still important points, because even if no one ever believes me when I talk about how I felt personally as Bob Lambert, then okay, well, don't believe me. But listen, as Bob Robinson, again, if I had said to anyone, Belinda included, if I had said, that, and of course I wouldn't, another reason, because it wasn't true. If I had said, look, that Jackie, she tricked me and, spoke, I think I'm quoted as being very sort of dismissive of her. I mean, that kind of talk in my circles was completely unacceptable. It was the circle was ahead of its time. Today, we take it for granted that, men being dismissive of partners, men not, but in those days, the people I was around were pioneers in, asserting or calling out, any male behaviour which was disparaging of partners. And so it's just totally implausible and out of character that I would have spoken of Jackie in any disparaging way.
Did you tell Simon Termaine that Jackie had tricked you into fathering TBS or anything of that sort?
No.
What is your evidence as to how what you told Belinda Harvey about the circumstances in which TBS came to be born?
Well, there was it's difficult to recall. But I guess did I give one at all? I had everyone in my circle, and let's not forget that for whatever reason, let's not forget that one way or another that Belinda, was meeting people in my circle. I mean, we read Robin Lane's testimony, and he says he, wasn't interested in meeting me, but he enjoyed meeting Belinda. But the point is that everyone knew, and we know it from the photographs we've seen, everyone knew that I was the father of a young person, and everyone knew that I cared deeply about him, that I did my best, that I helped Jackie in ways that...
Mr. Lambert, if I could just stop you there. Nobody is suggesting that you didn't care deeply about TBS, or that you weren't, as an in your activist persona, a good father to TBS. What I'm exploring is what you said to Belinda Harvey about the circumstances in which TBS had came to be born.
Well, just very simply, I used to go out with Jackie. she became pregnant. It wasn't, from my perspective, it wasn't planned, but that end of. I mean, I wouldn't have, made an issue of it.
Did you tell Belinda Harvey that your relationship with Jackie had only lasted a couple of months?
Well, I can't recall.
What did you say to Belinda Harvey about your relationship with Jackie?
I can't recall today. All I can say is that I would have told her as it was, and both in terms of my son, because, well, both my son and obviously the fact. What would have been important, of course, was, what was the present situation, and I think the present situation around here, I think it's pretty clear that at this point in time, Jackie has moved to Dagenham. We are certainly, on my account, my recollection, we're not having a sexual relationship anymore. I'm going over to see Jackie and my son quite regularly, and at quite an early stage, I can clearly recall arriving at Belinda's flat. By this time she's in Forest Gate, and I can recall arriving with my son and introducing him to Belinda, and I think other of her sort of housemates, I think, were there. I can picture that.
Both Simon Tremaine and Belinda Harvey say that you told them that Jackie had tricked you. Did you say that to try and garner sympathy?
Oh, I didn't quite catch it.
That Jackie had tricked you. Did you say that to garner sympathy?
Well, I didn't say it, so...
Did you tell Belinda Harvey that you'd had a short relationship with Jackie so that it did not complicate your romance with her?
I would have told her, as it was. The important thing was that it was a sexual relationship that had ended. I can't recall the chronology, but I can be certain of that.
Did you tell Belinda Harvey that you had co-written the leaflet, "What's Wrong with McDonald's"?
Well, I can't recall now. I can't rule out using that phrase. I may well have done. I stand by the evidence I gave yesterday about my role in it, but the fact that I was, was it? You just read out some evidence from Belinda saying, arriving in my bedsit in Hackney for the first time and seeing what's wrong with McDonald's leaflets. So, yeah, I was, I was never far from those leaflets, I was very sort of in Bob Robinson's, as Bob Robinson. Why wouldn't I be? And I always had them. I think for a while I did. I think seems quite plausible to me that I, may have wanted to claim a bit more credit for it than actually I deserved, and I think that sort of stayed with me a bit. But none of which I can recall clearly.
Did you give the impression to Simon Termaine that you had been significantly involved in the production of that leaflet?
Well, I can't recall. I'm sorry.
Might you have done so?
Yes. Well, yes.
We've been dealing with mainly with the first few months of your relationship with Belinda Harvey. In that period, did you tell any SDS manager about that relationship?
No, I'm sure that I didn't.
Did you tell any of your fellow UCOs about that relationship?
I'm pretty sure that I didn't.
Did any of your managers nevertheless know about it?
Not that I can recall.
Did any of your UCO colleagues nevertheless know about it?
Well, I can't recall anything at the time, no.
And did you keep it from them because you knew that what you were doing was completely wrong?
I didn't have the sense that it was completely wrong, but I must have had the sense that I had, gone against the advice that I'd had early on. I think.
And I am, just to be clear, dealing with early on. We'll come to who knew later on at another point in your evidence.
Yes.
Was it the case that you thought that your managers and colleagues wouldn't mind at all, but you didn't want to put your managers in an awkward situation?
Well, I think, yes. I obviously had experience of the sense that I had to manage things, but I also must, at the back of my mind at least, had those sort of words of advice about, not to get emotionally involved. But equally, I sort of got used to the other imperative of forming close friendships, and although, and then the difficulty when that sort of friendship became sexual.
It would have been awkward for your managers, wouldn't it? Because they wouldn't have wanted to report you, but that is what they should have done.
well, I can't speak for them, but I can, where from today's perspective, I can understand that.
Because that's exactly what happened when you did speak to D.I. Barber about Jackie, wasn't it?
In effect, yeah.
I've been using managers in an aggregate sense. You did say yesterday to me, when I was pursuing a similar line of questioning about knowledge of your relationship with RLC, that some managers and some colleagues would have disapproved. I would, being very careful about anonymity and writing down the nominal of anyone who is not an open officer, please could you tell us which managers and which officers you had in mind when you said that there were some who would have disapproved?
Well, what prompted me to say that yesterday was evidence that I've read from this inquiry. And I'm sure I've only scratched the surface of that. I haven't had time, but I've read, and it's very impactful. I've read it from former field officers, that's to say, undercover officers. I mean, you will know, you will have probably received their thoughts directly.
Yeah, we have their evidence. Sir, would that be a convenient time to take the morning break?
Yes, we're about to change
We are
topics, so we're
indeed,
not.
sir.
Yes, and then certainly it would be. 15-minute break.
All rise.
Thank you,
block.
sir. Just before we move to Debenhams, could I ask you a little bit more about the attitude of your managers to sexual relationships? Did you have any idea what Detective Inspector Docker's view of sexual relationships with members of the public in a UCI's undercover identity was?
I've got no clear recollection of anything, of hearing anything from him on that subject.
And what do you think his reaction would have been?
It's hard to recall.
Same questions for HN 109.
Yes, it's certainly at excuse me, at some point in this year, around this time, I think he did become part of the management team, and well, I think both at the time and I have read some of his a transcript statement, but more importantly, at the time, I think I would have anticipated some disapproval.
A disciplinarian.
Yes.
Bob Robinson, autumn 1986. By that stage, is it right that you are portraying yourself as a passionate, enthusiastic animal rights activist, approving of the ongoing campaign of ALF attacks?
Yeah, this is the date again.
Autumn 86.
Yes.
Up to and including the use of improvised incendiary devices against targets considered to be in the fur trade.
Yes.
Can you recall a meeting in the London Greenpeace office, possibly late 1986, when you are discussing direct action in a general sense against what those you were mixing would consider to be animal abusers?
Well, I can recall sort of, ongoing meetings in that office. I mean, I could, I think around that time, and, well, let's see, first of all, right, it's a very small office, meetings, I think there's always ongoing conversations in there, but I don't think you're ever going to get more than 4 or 5 people in there.
Yeah. It may only have been a small number of people.
Yeah, well, I can think of lots of situations where there's a group discussion around that time. I mean, what I would want to say briefly, if I may, is that around that time, those sort of discussions, invariably Jeff Shepherd and Paul Gravitt would be present. Now, both Jeff Shepherd and Paul Gravitt were supportive of the role that I was then carving out for myself. There was no sort of secret about it. I wanted to help, but I wanted to help in the ways that I was known for. On the one hand, to be helpful in terms of driving people, but equally to try and help in terms of prisoner support. Let me try and develop that just a little bit.
If you're going to develop it, I'm interested in direct action.
Yeah, but I'm
prisoners.
interested in clarifying now that both Jeff Shepherd and Paul Gravitt were, I discussed things. We discussed things together. I was not a leader. They knew very well that at that time, I lacked confidence to lead discussions, and that they knew, what my strengths and weaknesses were, and I think they, by and large, I think they were, they were supportive. And at one point, Paul Gravitt says, well, when Bob gave me praise for a leaflet or something, I was grateful for Bob's approval, but it was mutual. It was, I was grateful for their support in various ways, nothing unique about it, but we were, we were friends and we were supportive of each other. They knew what I was good at and what I was comfortable with. They knew, that what they knew about me, about Bob Robinson, it was convincing. It wasn't alien to me. I had no prior experience of leading. I'd been a follower. I'd been, in both in my real life and my assumed life, I never led anything. Even in the police prior to joining the SDS, everyone knew that about me. Bob's a nice guy, but, quite self-conscious at times. I could never get up and speak. And in fact, that stayed with me. And at the very first time I met Andrew Clark at Badgers, I had to start speaking about something, and I became very self-conscious. Everyone knew that about me. But driving the van, helping, I was reliable, and that was valuable. We've seen a lot of that in evidence, but really, they weren't looking for me to become involved in criminal activity. They, like everyone else in the movement at the time, they were trying to deal with the huge problem that they faced, which we were looking at yesterday, security and that. I think, obviously, I was doing it for a reason as well. I didn't want to get myself into that kind of situation. My managers didn't want me to. Nothing was without risk, but with me developing the role that I had, and the way that, say, for example, they were helping me, as I said, at Coxbarrow Fir Farm, when they handed me the megaphone, and I didn't have time to think about it, and I probably my first ever attempt at public speaking. Well, it certainly wasn't charismatic, but it was sufficient. They were helping me, and they said, "Well, look, Bob, look, you can do that." And the role that I developed, or that Bob Robinson developed from there on, was evidence of that. Meetings in that office, 4 or 5 people, generally, not always, but Bob Robinson, Paul Gravitt, Jeff Shepherd, and others. That was their understanding of what they appreciated about me, what they understood about me.
So a small group of mutually supportive, non-hierarchical animal rights activists.
Yes.
At least 2 of whom you knew were committing criminal offences in the name of the ALF.
Yes.
Exactly where you wanted to be.
Well, it was, of course, and with reasons to be confident that that they were supportive of the role that I needed to have, and that the movement wanted, in an attempt to separate people engaging in serious criminal activity from others who were supporting. And that support side, they knew that that's where I sat. They knew that's where I wanted to try and help. It was a difficult problem to separate it out, because we know, for example, that Robin Lane, with a support role, ended up being convicted. But nevertheless, that was the side that my 2 closest friends in my circle, that that's what they were keen, they were keen for me to get that role, which combined well with my established role of being a reliable driver.
Could we have up, please, from file 8 at tab 374, 740019. If we go to the next page, please. This is a report dated the 7th of April, 1987, signed by Chief Superintendent MacLeod, who at that stage is the DCI of the SDS, isn't he? Could we have paragraph 2, please? Animal Liberation Front ALF activist Jeff Shepherd is currently serving a prison sentence of 30 days following his failure to maintain weekly payments relating to a compensation order of £700 imposed by Highbury Corner magistrates in 1986. Due to the fact that HM Prison Pentonville is overcrowded, Shepherd has been moved to Hendon Police Station, where cells are being used to accommodate convicted prisoners. Do you recall Mr. Shepherd going to prison for this reason?
Well, I don't recall it, but this report, confirms what my understand, that I had that understanding at the time, yeah.
I think you've just described him as one of your closest activist friends, so can we assume this came from you?
Yes.
Can we go to the next paragraph, please? Since his arrest by police in September last year, Shepherd has been hesitant to return to crime for fear of further surveillance and possible arrest. His experience has acted as a deterrent to others. Nevertheless, he has been showing recently an inclination to resume ALF activity, and it is anticipated that he will engage in some form of this when he is released. He will no doubt return to his usual address, namely the Highbury Hotel, Highbury Park, N5. So, notwithstanding going to prison, your assessment of Mr. Shepherd was that he was inclined to resume activity of an ALF kind.
Yes.
His own evidence was that he was fired up at that time. Is that a fair description of his strength of feeling about animal rights and the need for ALF-style actions?
Yes, probably, yeah.
And to what extent were you interacting with Mr. Shepherd at this time?
Well, just, regularly meeting, both in terms of demonstrations of the kind that we've seen, and meeting that, probably most regularly in meetings at the London Greenpeace office, and meetings in the area.
Did you go and see him in prison?
On this occasion, no.
Yes.
No, I think I'd remember if I did. I no recollection.
Could we take that down now, please, and have up the document from volume 7, tab 258, 742707. And if we move to the substantial report, thank you. This is a report dated the 19th of August, 1986. So this is outside the chronological sequence, and I'm showing you it for a specific purpose. If we look first at paragraph 2, the Animal Liberation Front, ALF, has produced a newsletter entitled Interviews with Animal Liberation Front Activists, the document that we looked at yesterday, which has recently been distributed to all fully paid up members of the ALF supporters group. The 52-page newsletter is a compilation of interviews with several ALF activists and gives general descriptions in some detail of all types of ALF activity, from paint daubing of vivisectors' homes to extensive damage caused to animal abuse property by the use of improvised explosive incendiary devices. If we could take that down now, please. Sorry, that paragraph. The reference was 740 Yeah, thank you. And then I want to go to paragraph 5. Submitted with this report is a copy of the newsletter referred to above. My purpose in showing you this document is to fix in time when you submitted a copy of the newsletter. Is it right that you submitted a copy of interviews with ALF activists in August 1986.
Yes.
Could we take that down, the whole document down now, please? Could we have up from File 8, tab 401, 0740 088. This is a report dated the 9th of June 1987. If we could have paragraph 1 up first of all, please. Between the 6th of January 1985 and the 20th of May this year, 46 incendiary device attacks were carried out by members of the ALF and other extreme elements within the animal rights movement against targets deemed to be involved in animal abuse. None of the actions has resulted in injury to any person. Instead, substantial financial loss has been sustained, mainly by the meat and fur trade. The following information concerning the future of this campaign of economic sabotage has been received from a secret and reliable source. Before we go any further, would it be fair to say that the ALF's arson campaign was a very serious policing challenge?
Yes.
Could we go to the next paragraph, please? Details emanating from recent secret meetings between leading ALF activists in Manchester, Coventry, and London strongly suggest that the manufacture and use of timed incendiary devices will continue throughout 1987. It is also clear that the 11 actions carried out so far this year are all the responsibility of the ALF, even though they have not all been claimed, and one was claimed by the Vermin Liberation Front. Future actions will apparently follow the familiar pattern of attacks on department stores selling furs, incendiaries which are intended to activate the sprinkler system inside stores and cause damage by flooding, and on meat trade depots, lorries, offices, incendiaries intended to ignite petrol tanks on vehicles or otherwise cause damage by fire. So far, actions have taken place outside the Metropolitan Police District, although it now seems certain that London will be included in this year's campaign. Has this intelligence come from you?
Yes.
How did you obtain this intelligence?
As a result of the role that I had. I mean, I'm thinking more the role that Bob Robinson had within the movement. Now, I don't no recollection of being at all three of these meetings, but again, one, how did I get this? I mean, obviously, people are anyone involved in this is wanting to be very circumspect, security conscious, but I'm trusted. I was always driving people to and from meetings, so I'm listening, obviously, that and forming a picture. And then, in addition, I'm reading all the publications, and up to a point, I'm potentially distributing, items, booklets, and everything else. I think I should say. I mean, obviously, when I was distributing clearly, documents like the one we just referred to. I'd have to be careful, and people could see that I was. I always had fencing, gardening material available in the van, and so if I did have some very sort of difficult, sensitive documents, that I could, Bob's reliable, and I proved it. Transporting, whether it's documents or possibly as many as 200 big white laboratory rats. But whatever it was, that, broadly speaking, was my sort of agreed. Well, it was. Let me come back. I'm not going to talk about management, but just within the movement, this was what I was valued for. The one thing that I was expected or hoped, or that people like Shepherd and Gravitt were encouraging me to develop, was just, and I think I did, particularly in 1988, I did sort of develop the confidence to articulate at meetings, some of the support needed, or the support for this, but always, and I don't think I ever seriously went beyond that. But I'm sorry, I'm running on.
Did you attend a meeting in Manchester with leading people you would describe as leading ALF activists?
I can't recall today with certainty which of those three. I feel that I almost certainly attended one of them, just to be able to report this.
The last sentence in that paragraph: so far, actions have taken place outside the Metropolitan Police District, although it now seems certain that London will be included in this year's campaign. What were the grounds for your certainty?
Well, the grounds would be exactly the same. In the course of my role, hearing that.
Being careful about privacy restriction orders, who was it who was saying that London was going to be included in the forthcoming campaign?
Well, I honestly can't recall today who in particular was saying that, or speaking that.
And were you supportive of those sentiments?
Well, to the extent that it was implicit, I don't think I had to express support by, it's a given. I'm trusted, and I don't,
Could we go to paragraph 3, please? Whilst the ALF has no formal leadership, there is no doubt that the views of the imprisoned Ronnie Lee and Viv Smith continue to influence the tactics of most ALF activists. Specifically, Viv Smith has made it known that during the course of a prison visit, by privacy, actions against by her close friend privacy, actions against department stores selling furs should apparently continue during the summer months, notwithstanding the fact that furs are generally not stocked until the autumn. This advice appeals to activists on two grounds. Firstly, it would put pressure on stores to review their policy before taking delivery of new furs for the autumn and winter. Secondly, it is judged activists would be less likely to attract the attention of store detectives when planting devices in the summer. Is the source of this intelligence the same as you have just described?
Well, yes, to the best of my recollection today.
But the intelligence message that you are reporting is that the campaign's coming in the summer.
Yes.
And you go on at paragraph 4. Accordingly, it may be appropriate to review the type and construction of ALF-timed incendiary devices and the method of planting them. If we can zoom in that take that paragraph down, thank you. You will see on that right-hand page there is then a section about construction, and under that a section on the method of planting. If you wish to refresh your memory, you are very welcome. The question I am going to ask you is whether the principal source of this information was the leaflet you had submitted in August '96, interviews with ALF activists. Perhaps we could have the right-hand page blown up. The one that's on the right, page 3, please. Yes, so it's just the one page on the screen. Thank you.
Yes, that would seem to be the case.
If we go over the page, could we look at paragraph 5, please? Recent arrests and charges made in connection with devices planted in department stores in South Wales earlier this year have reminded activists that police inquiries into these matters tend to be thorough. Equally, after the trial of Lee Smith, Roger Yates and others at Sheffield Crown Court earlier this year, they are under no illusions about the level of sentencing to expect in the event of a subsequent conviction. Accordingly, the use of incendiary devices is restricted to the most dedicated activists who are forced to observe strict security even amongst their comrades in the animal rights movement. Such activists always pay due regard to the prospect of surveillance and infiltration, even though they may not always be expert at countering it. Taking this intelligence with the intelligence we looked at a moment ago to the effect that there was an imminent summer IID campaign coming to London, that very much focuses your mission, doesn't it? Your mission is to obtain intelligence to disrupt. Is that right?
Yes, indeed.
And if possible, provide intelligence which might assist an evidential investigation.
Well, let's be clear, at the time that I'm writing this, I have no experience of any SDS officer sort of, being expected. Well, let's put, no, I'm not quite getting it. Well, okay. The role, the SDS officer role, I mean, it was so ingrained that it was an intelligence gathering role that was never intended to be used evidentially. I mean, and more to the point, in my experience and in every field officer's experience up to that point, never had been. So, I mean, there was, I don't think I'd really focused my mind on that requirement.
What was the purpose of your intelligence then?
Well, as it as it always was, to provide intelligence for C Squad. If, like, I mean, the one experience that I had, we've looked at, which was when I provided intelligence that, to the best of my recollection, played a significant part in the disruption of the Wickham raid. But that was my only experience. But at no point did that. At no point did that ever. There was never any suggestion that my intelligence was going to be used evidentially. The question never arose. And equally, I mean, I don't think SDS field officers were sort of put under the sort of pressure that perhaps an undercover officer working in the criminal field, the organised crime field, might be under. That, look, this is your target. I mean, mine was a long-term intelligence gathering operation. This was my target. I think it is important. Of course, this intelligence would place demands upon me, upon other field officers deployed in field. But there is quite a big distinction, I think, to be made.
Concentrating on the last two sentences of paragraph 5, would it be fair to say that what you are communicating there is this is a hard target to crack? They are security conscious. They know they're going to prison for a long time if they get caught, and they are on the lookout for infiltrators.
I'm again, not for the first time, I'm highlighting their objective, their awareness of having proven time and time again to be lacking when it came to being as security conscious as they needed to be. They were, and I would have been reporting on people's reactions, concerns, because really the police generally, and maybe the SDS is a small part of that, but the number of arrests and convictions was steadily mounting. So, yeah, they understood that they needed to be better, and I do believe in a small way that the role that fellow activists, the way that they saw me being able to help overcome this, I'll leave it there. I think that you know, they needed, yes, they needed to be more security conscious, but then, you know, they may be still struggling to achieve their objective.
As you say, not very expert at it. One of the fundamental security precautions which they took was to work in small cells, wasn't it, or alone?
Yes.
Could we go to paragraph 6, please? Attention will continue to be paid to known leading ALF activists, both in London and the home counties, and any indication of planned incendiary device attacks will be reported immediately. Can you help us with whether this is what you wrote when you submitted your draft report, or whether this is an observation that has been added, or an assurance which has been added by those who completed the report in the front office?
Yeah, my recollection of SDS reporting, which has been hugely stimulated in, well, particularly the last 2 years, that does not at all read like being part of my own report. However, strictly speaking, as you can see, the quotation marks indicate that it is. So I can't recall now, but it could be, it could be added on. We've seen one report where there's a preamble which is clearly not my intelligence, but without the quotation mark. So,
if we assume, for the purposes of my next question, that the fact that it is within the quotation marks suggests that it did come from you,
yes,
is this assuring you? Is this you assuring your SDS managers that you are going to be paying close attention to London's leading ALF activists?
yes, it could be that, or it could be managers reassuring the customer on C Squad.
And in practice, given the mutually supportive, non-hierarchical small group of activists that you have infiltrated, that means a particular concentration on Mr. Shepherd and Mr. Gravett.
I think first and foremost, for me and my managers, it meant operational security. I think, yes, basically, Bob, just, carry on, and, it could not sort of, it couldn't afford to prompt any sort of different behaviour on my part. But yes, obviously, I would continue with my role, yeah.
And am I right that that involved a particular concentration on Mr. Gravett and Mr. Shepherd?
Well, nothing more particular than hitherto.
And I can take it from the answer you've just given, you were most certainly talking to your managers about these developments.
Yes.
This is a big deal, isn't it? IID campaign coming to London.
Yes.
And your managers would have wanted a result?
I think no. I honestly think that is going too far. That seems to me it might make perfect sense in the world of criminal investigation, CID, not on the SDS. There must get a result. No, it didn't work like that.
And you would have wanted to obtain intelligence that assisted with policing the forthcoming campaign.
Yes.
You are giving your professional life to this, working undercover to get precisely the sort of intelligence that has come into sharp focus.
Yes, if possible.
Can we take the document down now, please? Is that 5 and 8? Could we have up, please, 0728 976? This is the SDS annual report for 1987. Thank you. Can we look at this is the covering letter to John Chilcott. From at the top of the page, you will see it's from Hugh Annesley to John Chilcott, who was then the Deputy Under Secretary of State for the Home Office. I am writing to seek authority to continue the Special Demonstration Squad for a further 12 months. The past year has continued the trend of 1986, which saw a reduction in the number of large-scale street demonstrations in favour of smaller protests, often mounted by ad hoc groups campaigning on specific issues. In this respect, intelligence provided by the Special Demonstration Squad has been a major element in enabling us to judge correctly the mood of various campaigns supported by political extremists, whereby the police response was realistic and informed. In addition to the public order issues of street demonstrations, a matter of particular concern is the militant animal rights movement spearheaded by the Animal Liberation Front, ALF, an organisation now totally dominated by anarchists committed to direct action. In July, the ALF achieved the biggest success in its 10-year history when over £9 million worth of damage was caused to Debenhams department stores in Luton, Romford and Harrow. The devices were found to have been manufactured by Andrew Clark, an anarchist living in Tottenham, who went on to plan further attacks against various targets, mostly stores selling animal furs. As a result of excellent intelligence work by an SDS officer, Clark and another activist, Geoffrey Shepherd, were arrested in the act of manufacturing further devices, in which it transpired would have been used 2 days later at a specific Oxford Street store. The arrests also prevented the first use of fireball devices which Clark was developing. There is no doubt that further large-scale criminal damage was prevented. This feat was achieved only at considerable risk to the SDS officer involved, and his courageous achievement is a rare opportunity of seeing a tangible result of the professionalism and dedication which for many years has come to be expected of the SDS field officer. Now, this jumps forward in time, obviously, to events later in 1987, but the fact that Hugh Annesley is writing to John Chilcott about this, and that the animal rights side of the SDS operation merits a long paragraph in the covering letter, is a good indicator, isn't it, of the gravity of the issue and the level of importance attached by your managers to your work.
Yes.
If we could take that down now, please. How did you then go about obtaining intelligence about the forthcoming summer IID campaign?
In exactly, carrying on in exactly the same, my same role. In some respects, what are we? I'm sort of 3 years, 3 years into my role. I mean, I'd learned quite a lot about, how best to do that, without, I mean, I got a reminder of it from reading some of Chris Bailey's transcript, where he was talking about me in the pub after one of the regular London Greenpeace meetings, and I think it was probably unwitting testimony. He said some question about, well, did you know this? And oh no, he said Bob, Bob Robinson, he'd know that before everyone. He sort of painted a picture, which I recognised of how I worked without being in any way suspicious. I don't think I was ever going to sort of operate on a bigger stage. I was comfortable in a small group setting. I was never wanting to lead people. I was a very good listener, and I was fortunate that my such skills, that interpersonal skills that I had, and the ability to remember things, then after 3 years, I mean, yes, I just, to be honest, the most important thing was to carry on as ever. I was, to be listening and being part of things, driving whenever, it's not so much the driving, it's being trusted to take people places and to be part of, to be part of things where I'm going to, carry on getting information. But I mean, the intelligence with the actual preemptive intelligence for SEAL, I mean, that came out of the blue. I didn't plan. I mean, you can never really sort of plan to be in the right place at the right time, or to get sort of preemptive intelligence. But even if you don't get the preemptive intelligence, you're going to get, at some point, you're going to get to find out, intelligence about who may have been involved.
Between the date of your intelligence report that we looked at in some detail, namely the 9th of June 1987, and the day on which the devices were planted at various Debenham stores on the 11th of July 1980, of activist events were you attending?
Just this, just the same as always. I mean, unless there's a report to help me, but I mean, I can be pretty confident that, I would have been definitely, I think, yes, I can be confident that I would be paying close attention, making sure that I had reasons to, pop into the London Greenpeace office. All the usual things, I guess, but on top of which there may have been, I think it would have been unusual, each week really something. I needed to be available. I needed to be checking because, someone I might be contacted at any time to help with something. Having said all of that, I still had to maintain cover in terms of, being one of the few people in employment, in the, broadly speaking, with many exceptions, but broadly speaking, I was, I think Chris Bailey was in full-time employment, but and maybe the two of us were different in that sense. Obviously, I had, and of course, I had regular meetings with managers and trips home as well. But nothing. I mean, at the moment, I can't call anything sort of different to mind.
So continuing to mix with and socialise with Paul Gravett.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah.
Continuing to mix with and socialise with Jeff Shepherd.
Well, potentially, but I can't, I mean, unless I can, see, or if I could recall, I can't really without, I can't really speak to individuals whether I saw them or not at given times, unless there's a something remaining from that period to assist.
Continuing to mix with and socialise with Andrew Clark.
If I can't recall, I've got no specific recollections now of when and where, or if and when I saw him, but potentially, yes.
And what impression did you have and what information did you glean from Paul Gravett in this period?
Nothing real. Well, certainly nothing that I can recall today.
Same question in relation to Jeff Shepherd.
Nothing that I can recall today.
Same question in relation to Andrew Clark.
Nothing that I can recall today.
We have recovered no intelligence naming Mr. Gravett or Mr. Shepherd in this period. Why, when they were two ALF activists that you were very close to at this key juncture, is there no reporting at all from you about these men?
Well, I can't be certain, and I don't, with respect, I don't think the inquiry should be certain that the absence of reporting today is really, it's not conclusive at all. I think I can't think of any basis for thinking that we have today recovered my reporting in its entirety, but leave that to one side.
Did you notice any change in the demeanour of Paul Gravett in this period?
Well, I can't remember today that. I've obviously thought, subsequently, but at the time, I don't think. There's nothing that I can recall today.
If you had, you should have reported it, shouldn't you?
Well, yes, but now here's the thing. Yeah, but maybe. Well, look. Far from every discussion that I had with managers about, my dealings with my target group resulted in a printed report. So that probably needs to be said. But either way, I mean, all I can say is that, I can't recall anything. And I mean, I suppose, look, it's highly likely that if, let's say if I had gone to London Green, I mean, let's say maybe for some reason I didn't go to the main, well, even if I did go to the main London Greenpeace meeting on a Thursday, in the pub afterwards, maybe Paul Gravett was there, and maybe Jeff Shepherd was there, maybe Andrew Clark was there. Entirely possible, but no, I didn't. If I didn't, I can't recall having anything to report. But more coming back to your point, there would have been nothing to report in print. There wouldn't have been anything. I mean, probably the majority of London Greenpeace meetings I went to are not subject of reports by me. In the early days they were, but by now. So it's certainly very difficult today to try and, recreate any clear picture of that period.
The same question in relation to Mr. Shepherd and Mr. Clark. If you had detected any change in their demeanour, you should have reported that.
Well, at the very least, if I had, I would have discussed it with my managers for sure. And maybe I was being asked. I don't recall. Maybe they were asking me. But I can't recall today.
And it would have been particularly important to report any such changes of demeanour by known ALF activists, given the imminent IID campaign.
Indeed it would, but if I may, Mr. Barr, with your guidance, there is something very important about, what my understanding was at that time. I'm sort of thinking about, police activity related, but outside of, things that I was made aware of.
Sorry, I'm not quite following you. If this involves anything to do with people who might be anonymous or with alternative sources of intelligence, then I would like you to write it down rather than utter it.
I think, I could say in very broad terms that after I submitted the report we were looking at, I was aware that it was being, as always, it was being delivered to C Squad, and that, yeah.
Yeah, you can say that.
Oh, yeah. Well, yeah. So, yes, I was made aware that special branch surveillance teams were tasked to follow. Well, they were given a tasking, to follow suspects, and more in terms of memorable visual recollections, which are very, very in great short supply. But some things do stay with you. Visual. I was in a pub in Stoke Newington, certainly with, I can't quite remember specifically who, but with my sort of regular comrades, and I saw two surveillance officers, special branch surveillance officers, who I knew fairly well, and that, if nothing else, apart from sort of giving a bit of a surprise, but not that they were revealed themselves. Of course, they were in the pub, but anyway, it sort of underlined to me the fact that that there was this this kind of interest or response.
Is it your evidence that that was in the period between the 9th of June 1987 and the 11th of July 1987, or was it at some other time?
I think it was, but it's either in this period, or it comes some point between the Debenhams attacks and the arrests.
In the period between the 9th of June 1987 and the 11th of July 1987, what indications did you get that there was going to be an attack on Debenham stores on the night of the 11th to the 12th of July 1987?
I didn't get any. I didn't get any indication.
Did you get any indication that there was going to be any IID attack in that same period?
No.
Did you get any inkling that there was anything afoot?
No, I don't think I did.
So is it your evidence that Mr. Gravett, Mr. Shepherd, and Mr. Clark in this period behaved exactly as normal?
No, that can't be my evidence, because I just have not got any recollection of. You know, I'm sure I did see them during that period, but you know, I can't really. You know, just can't say. For sure, I can't be sure.
So might I invite you to take a slightly early lunch?
Certainly. I think there may come a time very soon, will there not, when we will have to stop the live transmission.
I'm not sure I'd use the word very soon.
Well, there will at some stage come that I had thought it might be at this stage, but it will be a little later. Very well. We'll resume at 1:55.
All rise.